You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Evan, what's going on? It's a fabulous Monday. How you doing?
Hey.
How was your weekend?
Oh, I'm doing great. Our weather was just incredible. I was outside probably 23 out of 24 hours throughout the weekend, and it was just a blast. What about you?
Same here. I went for a little hike on Saturday, went on the boat yesterday, did some water skiing, and then went to Whole Foods and got some shopping done. So I'm ready for my week, man.
Sweet.
Very cool. Well, we talked pre-show that we were going to touch upon some weight loss secrets and weight loss mindset issues because we have so many patients that come into us initially really wanting to focus on weight loss, and weight loss really is the effect of good health and all the things we're doing, and it may not be the cause. Essentially, we don't lose weight and then we get healthy. We get healthy and then we lose weight. The problem is A, which is getting healthy, and then B, the effect of losing weight. It can be different for some people, especially women. There can be a lot of lag time between A, getting healthy, and B, losing weight. And we have to make sure we have the right mindset so we can stay the course.
Definitely. And that's something that it's on our top 5 list for most of the people that we work with. Weight loss is a goal. And a lot of times it's just really an education process for you and I to really tell them, look, with this type of adrenal health or with this type of thyroid health or with this gut infection, et cetera, it's going to be hard for you to lose weight, if not impossible. And so a lot of times it's just patience, honestly. And sometimes if people try to bail out too early and they don't stick through their program to fully get better, the weight loss may never come. So sometimes it does take 3 to 6 months. And that's pretty good. If it took you 40 years to become overweight, if it only takes you 6 months to start turning the dial the other way, then that's pretty good.
Absolutely. And I would say with a lot of my female patients, because females tend to have a harder time losing weight if they've gained weight, just because of the fact that hormonally there's fluctuations that happen throughout the month, especially if they're still cycling, meaning their progesterone and estrogen's falling, they're having a period every month, they're ovulating. It's going to be a little more difficult because excessive exercise and or cutting calories can send stress signals to the body. And when those stress signals happen to the body, that can throw off the hormones, that can cause increase in PMS, lower thyroid function, and just more metabolic stress on the body. With guys can kind of up exercise a bit, maybe even tweak calories down a little bit, maybe even lessen fat a little bit, and then really drive weight loss in a more non-sustainable way, per se, meaning it's not something you do forever. And they will have less ramifications because of the fertility and the hormonal fluctuations. Men's hormones are kind of like a foghorn. It just kind of goes throughout the month, where women, you kind of get this orchestra going on. And anyone that listens to an orchestra, you have the strings and you have the percussion instruments and the horns. And if one of these things is off, that orchestra can really go and sound like noise pretty fast.
Yeah, so that's a good point that you already hit on, is there are a lot of sources of stress that women honestly may not be aware of. in terms of the obesogens, for example, the hormone disrupting chemicals that are out there that can cause you to gain weight. Some of the skincare products, that's something that I always try to get to. Maybe it's not top of the food chain issue, but if you're somebody listening, maybe you're working with one of us on a program already, take a look at your skincare products and make sure that all the parabens and all of the phthalates and all these other chemicals are gone, because that can be a roadblock. Maybe not a huge one, but definitely one that I've seen.
Absolutely. And stress affects women and men differently, right? We always talk about women and men. They're equal, but not the same. And by I mean not the same, there's different biology and biochemistry happening. So Dr. John Gray talked about this at a lecture I attended recently. He talked about men under stress. And again, obviously, prolonged stress is going to affect every person. It's going to lower their hormones. It's going to create a more catabolic environment, meaning more stress hormones, and that will eventually drop down their anabolic, their rebuilding hormones. So they're more catabolic, they're breaking down faster with less anabolic hormones, where they don't heal and repair as fast. So men under stress, they actually can get a bump in testosterone from a little bit of stress. So you get actually a little bit of a boost of their repairing hormones. And in the same lecture, Dr. John Gray talked about women under a little bit of stress like that can actually drop down their testosterone. It may make them a little bit harder to recover, and can also decrease their libido and such as well. So we just got to be careful. There's a fine balance in which women will be under so much stress where it may start dropping down their anabolic hormones. And again, with different women, it's going to be, different for each. So like my wife, for instance, is an executive. She runs a massive company, and when she's under stress, it affects her just a little bit. Now, in the beginning, after a vacation, after more meditations and more lifestyle strategies, she can deal with it better, but that anabolic hormone definitely declines. Her ability to exercise and repair is less. Now, I have some women that are attorneys and that work 100-hour weeks, and they can do it up to a period of time. So because of the fluctuations in hormones with women, not everyone's going to handle that stress the same. So we got to be careful of how much stress that we're under at work. And we also have to make sure that the harder we're working, the harder we're resting. So there's that old analogy like work hard, play hard. I don't like that. It's work hard, rest hard, play a little. So if you're working hard, especially as a female, because of the hormonal fluctuations you're under, we just have to be very careful of that. Men don't quite have the same issues. They do. I mean, I see a lot of men who are stressed out, but because their hormones aren't fluctuating as much, and because fertility is a little bit easier for a man, because the main goal of fertility is just having good sperm that have good shape and a good amount and good movement. Outside of that, we don't have this beautiful flow of hormones that need to be present to have that sperm fertilize that egg and to have it stick. So we got to be very careful with women and got to make sure stress is dialed in. And the constitution, meaning how much stress we can handle, is different for each person. I've seen women who are attorneys work 100 hours a week and their adrenals actually look pretty good. And some women working 40 hours a week and their adrenals look like crap. So it's different for each person.
Yeah, or stay-at-home moms. I've seen it both ways, being completely wrecked or being pretty good.
Being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job, especially in the beginning when their sleep is declined. That is like, you might as well be, an executive working 100 hours a week, because when you're getting up like that, you might as well be a doctor on call, right? Getting called in, because your sleep's getting interrupted, which is going to throw off your blood sugar, and then you may not have the time to exercise and move because the baby needs to be fed all the time. So we kind of have a couple of different aspects there. That's why I said the harder you're working, and being a stay-at-home mom, especially in that first year, is super stressful. We got to make sure the diet is 100% dialed in. And we can't use the excuse of eating for two as a reason to eat junk food. We got to make sure you're like a prize fighter, getting all of the nutrients in that you can.
Yep. So that was the first good piece there, is the stress component and how that could be a stall in weight loss, the different sources of stress, the chemicals, etc. Maybe we should talk about some of the nutrients that are helpful too. Some of the zincs and the seleniums and the other, trace minerals that are important for the thyroid. Because every time you hear some woman that thinks that they're overweight, they think, oh, is something wrong with my thyroid? Do I need to be put on thyroid meds? And A lot of times that's not the answer, right?
We want to make sure the nutrients are there 100%. So when it comes to that, fat-soluble nutrients, especially vitamin A, are going to be really important for the thyroid, especially the thyroid receptor sites. Zinc's going to be vitally important. So if we have issues with losing our taste, I find a lot of people that are really craving a whole bunch of sugar. What's happened is their taste buds have down-regulated because of deficiencies in zinc and poor digestion and poor HCl. And the higher amounts of sugar foods, they don't even notice the overpowering sugar. Like if I engage in some kind of refined sugar ingestion, I'm just like, whoa, what the heck is this? This is so overstimulating just from a taste perspective, forget a hormone perspective. And some people, I find their taste buds have really down regulated. We get them off with a lot of that sugar and we get them on a good high quality multivitamin with 20 to 30 milligrams of zinc in there per day. And we get their diet full of really good zinc rich foods, high quality meats, etc., that their taste buds get more sensitive and they need less sugar to have the same type of mouthfeel response.
Yep.
So we talked about zinc. Selenium is going to be a big one, especially for the thyroid and thyroid conversion. And a lot of women have autoimmune thyroid antibodies. So getting the selenium up there, whether it's 1 to 2 Brazil nuts a day, is a pretty good backbone. Good quality organ meats, oysters, seafood's going to be very helpful to get the selenium and get some of the nutrients in there. Iodine's helpful, but we don't want to go too high. And if you are autoimmune, currently active, we want to be careful at boosting it up, outside of 500 micrograms because we don't want to stimulate more autoimmune reaction. So the thyroid's really important for fat loss and energy, and the nutrients that connect and help with thyroid function, to name a few, are going to be zinc. To name a few, are going to be magnesium, selenium, vitamin A, and we can even throw in copper as long as we're not getting an excess. Typically, if we're getting enough selenium, that will help balance the copper out as well.
Yeah. So what comes next? I mean, is it the nutrition piece? Is it watching out for too many carbs? Is it the exercise, not too intense, not too long duration? Like, what's the next keystone for you?
Well, I always look at the diet piece first, and we're always starting with a paleo template. And most people in their head, I say the word paleo, they go to meat diet. And that's basically brainwashing from conventional media. So we have to hit Control Alt Delete and put that in the trash right there. So a paleo template really is just talking about the quality of the macronutrients. Macronutrients being PFC, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So it's talking about eating organic and grass-fed and pasture-fed as much as possible, avoiding hormones and pesticides and GMOs, and then dialing in the macronutrients, meaning proteins. How high are we going to be? Are we going to have maybe just a palm serving of meat twice a day? Or are we going to have, 5 full hand servings throughout the day? A full hand maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the day. Like, where are we at with that? Also, how much starch can we handle? Can we handle a sweet potato once or twice a day? Or are we going to primarily be more on a keto where we're going to crank the fat super high, 70, 80%, keep the vegetables as the majority of our carbohydrates, and primarily eat, moderate to lower protein food? So we have that dial, the PFC dials there, and we're going to dial it up accordingly and just kind of hit the delete button about paleo, meaning high amounts of meat. It can, but it also doesn't have to be.
Yep.
So that's important because that aspect right there allows us to have the nutrients coming in. It allows us to not drive inflammation because people forget, right? We're either driving inflammation or we're not. So it's kind of binary. If we have an anti-inflammatory diet, that's great, but we're also not doing something that's just as important. We're not driving inflammation, which a lot of people are going to be driving with their typical diet. And if we're stabilizing the blood sugar, we're also going to be taking less stress off the adrenal glands, which the more stressed we are, the more we trigger our epigenome, our epigenetics, right? These are the things that turn on our genes to be in a stressed out state. The more stressed out we are, the more we want to hold on to calories, especially as fat, so we have them in times of famine, if you will.
Yep. To me, I mean, stress has popped up time and time again in every conversation I think we've had. I think honestly, this is probably the biggest root of it because I feel like a lot of people listening, they already have the diet pretty dialed in, but they're not resting as much. They're not resting hard, like you say, and maybe not playing enough at all. You could have a perfect diet and a good supplement program, but if you just come home from work and you're just completely tanked and then you go straight to more emails at home or straight to TV or some other distraction, and you're not really actively resting. Your brain is still stuck in that fight or flight sympathetic. I feel like that's going to be the biggest roadblock that's going to make you or break you is the nervous system. I feel like that if your endocrine system's stressed, it's stressed no matter how much you tweak your sweet potato or whatever. If you're stuck in that mode, I feel like you're going to continue to struggle.
Yeah, that's why things like stepping out and getting a 5 or 10 minute meditation during the day is helpful. Also, you talked a lot about forest bathing, kind of getting out in
Yep.
nature for a few minutes. You want to touch upon that?
Yeah, I mean the science is proven if in case people want it, but the fact is you're built to be outside. There used to not be such a thing as indoors. Maybe the cave was indoors, but now we have the ability to hide ourselves from the outdoor environment, which is good if there's a bad storm, but otherwise we want to be out there. We're getting tons of negative ions out there when you're talking about being around water or sources of trees. You're going to get exposed to these phytoncides, these aromatic compounds in nature. Now, if you only have the beach available, then that's awesome. If you don't even have that and you just have the desert, well, you have to just work with what you have. I had people email in, well, I don't have a forest. What am I supposed to do? Just use the nature that you have around you. But the forest specifically is something that they're doing a lot of research on. It's called Shinrin-yoku in Japan. And they're seeing reductions in cortisol. They're seeing reductions in blood pressure. They're seeing all sorts of other biomarkers that are indicative that we're shifting people into the parasympathetic state. And to me, that's like the biggest top of the food chain issue is whether you're in the parasympathetic or whether you're in the sympathetic. And for me, modern life, it's very tough to stay having a balance between those two. So anything that you take away from it, anytime you're out, even in the grocery store, let's say you're at Costco or something and there's tons of people everywhere and it's madness. You have the ability to respond to that situation with that fight or flight mode, or you have the ability to say, man, we're spoiled. This is a first world problem that I have to wait in line to buy my organic food. And then you just shift yourself out of that fight or flight. And if you can control your nervous system a little bit better with your mind, that's going to help you because everybody's going to get exposed to similar forms of stress as you. But if you have built up yourself, whether that's with the supplements that we talk about, or whether that's with a mindfulness practice, and you have the ability to disengage the trigger, so to speak, you have this loaded gun, but you're going to disengage, you're not going to pull the trigger of that fight or flight, you're going to be a lot more powerful than someone else who's going to break under a stressful time.
I agree. So getting out, like, what's the dose? Are we talking like something like 5 or 10 minutes even out there, getting out there enough? Is that okay? Or are we talking like we need 20 minutes? How much you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a cool thing that people should look up, and maybe you can put this in the show notes. It's called a nature pyramid. And I'm not sure if this was the National Park Service or who came up with the nature pyramid, but it's kind of like the old food pyramid converted for nature. And it shows sort of the dosage of nature that you want. So daily, you want to be getting exposed to your city parks and your urban environments. And then it goes up to, I believe it's like monthly, you want to get exposed to like state parks or national forests, bigger places. And then whether it's a couple of times a year, you want to get exposed to even bigger sources of nature. And then at the very tip top of the pyramid, it's like, national parks and massive places where you're just completely in undomesticated wilderness. And that's sort of the top of the food chain. So it's sort of like you do the best that you can during your normal work life, but you do want to make some time to actually just completely get disconnected from the grid and just go into pure wilderness, as much as possible, really. But they have kind of a recommendation there that I can't remember right now.
Got it. Because my wife went for a walk this morning pretty early, and I think walking can be great. I look at it more as restoration and stress reducing than exercise to put on muscle per se. I wouldn't consider that like exercise, like going in, doing some sprints or doing some kettlebell swings, but I see it more as a restorative type of exercise versus a stimulus to build muscle from that sense. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. You could walk your way to weight loss if you wanted to. You don't have to beat yourself up and wear silly ankle weights and carry little dumbbells with yourself either. If you just walk, I mean, that's what you're designed to do. And if you're not walking, you have a deficiency of walking. Let's say if you like numbers, you're not getting 6,000 steps a day, you're getting less, then if you're hitting that number, you're going to guarantee your success rate. It's going to go up a lot more than if you're just being sedentary. I mean, let's face it, that's not good.
Yeah, I think it depends too where you're at. Like if you're getting close, the closer you are getting to the weight you want to be, those last pounds are going to be harder to come off. So walking may not get you there because of the fact that the muscles that you need to stimulate fat loss and put on muscle, you have to have a higher level of stimulus. And especially like the glutes, for instance, these are phasic based muscles, meaning you need a lot of hip extension and deep angle at the hip joint to stimulate them. So like a box jump or a sprint where you're really moving that hip joint through a larger range of motion, where if you look at a walk, you're kind of only moving your hip joint through like maybe a 50-degree range of motion. But you look at a sprinter who's leaning in at a 45-degree angle and that knee coming all the way up and then kicking all the way back. You're almost moving that hip joint at 160 degrees. So
Yeah, sprints are amazing.
Yeah, you're getting a lot more stimulation. So I think walking is great. And then once you plateau on it, doing a walk, sprint, even if it's a few minutes walking followed by a 10-second sprint, that is a phenomenal way to go. And if you're starting out, it could even just be a power walk. Like you just going all out for 10 to 20 seconds is helpful just to get those muscles stimulated, because certain muscles are tonic muscles, meaning they're more endurance, low threshold, low stimulus muscles. Others are going to be phasic, meaning we need a higher level of stimulation. That's where box jumps, plyometrics, sprints, and resistance training with heavier weights going to be what's needed to get those muscles recruited.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I mean, I'm not currently in a sprint. I mean, I'm pretty lean right now, so I'm mainly just lifting weights. But a lot of people, this is also going to depend on where you're at in your journey with your adrenals, because Justin and I would never recommend going straight into sprints if you're stage 3 adrenal fatigue. You're just going to tear yourself up and make yourself feel awful. So this is sort of like, I don't know, what would you call this, Justin? Like phase 2 of your program. If you're already kind of working towards health, then you may be ready for the sprints, but right out of the gate, it might destroy you.
Correct. If you have symptoms right now of fatigue and sleep issues or mood issues or inability to perform at work or in your house and living, then we want to always follow my 3 rules. Number 1, choose exercise that allows you to feel good after it. So again, if you're going to CrossFit and doing your AMRAP, right, as many reps as possible and feeling like really depleted afterwards and not energized, well, that's already strike 1. Number 2 is you want to feel like emotionally after you do it, like you want to be able to step back and say, yeah, I could do that again. Like that's doable. I can do that. And then number 3, if it's a morning workout, later on that night, how do you feel? Or if it's a afternoon or night workout, how do you feel that next morning? Do you feel like run over by a bus, or do you feel like, yeah, I feel okay? Barring all stressors being stable and sleep being stable, how do you feel? So 3 positive answers have to be there. Do you feel energized? Can you emotionally repeat the movements? And then number 3, how do you feel later on that day or that next morning?
Yep, that's perfect. That you ought to make like a little poster or some type of little visual for that. I think that'd be cool for us to share to people.
I think that'd be a good idea. I'll put that on my queue.
All right.
And then also one last thing to add to that, start out with the restorative. If you're in doubt, the restorative movements are going to be walking. And I'm a big fan of like breath walking. So it's like kind of a walking meditation where you take 4 breaths in through the nose and then 4 breaths out. And I like that because nose breathing is very powerful for the parasympathetic stimulation. The olfactory nerve is, I think olfactory is either 1 or 2. I think it's number 1. I think the optic nerve is number 2. But that olfactory nerve, that's like inside your nose, inside your nasal cavity. And those nerve fibers are actually parasympathetic. So they're helping that rest and digest side of the nervous system, which is great because a lot of people are in the sympathetics and their chest breathing, meaning they're breathing through their neck muscles and their chest. And it's really simple. You can just put your hand on your stomach and your chest and breathe and see which hand moves first. And a lot of people, their top hand, their chest hand moves first. So that cranial nerve number 1 really is a parasympathetic fiber. So we talk about activating the parasympathetics, the rest and digest, is really focus on good nose breathing, deep nasal breaths throughout the day.
Yeah, you want that diaphragm or the belly when you're putting your hand down there to pop out first. I just read a book this weekend called Medical Meditation, and it was great, all about like Kundalini yoga and tons of different breathing exercises and different poses that you can do for different things. So balancing out the nervous system was one of them. So if you're sitting in a chair, you can do that too. And you would just put your thumb on your index finger and you would have this pose here. They call it like a mudra, where you
Yeah.
put your thumb on the index finger there, and you literally can just sit and you have your hands on your knees, and you don't have to be in what they call the easy pose. You can just be sitting in a chair, sitting upright with your spine straight. And the breath work for that was just inhaling through the nose, holding for 10, and then exhaling. And that was it. And it suggested that you do that for 11 minutes. And so if you just do that and you turn off that fight or flight, in a way, maybe we can't directly prove that you're going to start losing weight because of it. But if you can just do these little minor shifts in your nervous system state throughout the day, that can be enough to prevent you from getting into that fat storage mode like you talked about, because your body thinks it's getting chased by a bear and it needs to put you into storage mode, because you never know when you're going to eat next. So you better store that body fat because you might need it for protection and all sorts of other things. So it is a protective mechanism. Your body's not stupid, and a lot of self-hatred and self abuse, negative self-talk comes up from this for women when they have excess body fat. But the body's doing what it would have needed to do to keep you alive prehistorically. Now it's just not cool to store fat. So, it's not sexy to do that. And a lot of women have pressure on them. Your body's doing what it's told to do. So if it's being told to run from the bear and be in fight or flight and store fat, that's what it's going to do. So don't, beat yourself up. Don't talk down about yourself. You just have to look at what's going on hormonally and biochemically, and then try to tweak that as best you can.
I like that. And then that breathing pattern was what again?
That breathing pattern is inhaling through the nose. You hold it for a count of 10, which it's a little bit long if you're not used to breathing exercises, and then exhaling, and then repeat. And you do that for a total of 11 minutes with the thumb on your index finger and those hands resting on your knees, sitting straight up or sitting in what they call the easy pose, where you're in like Indian style and you just sit there, and that's it. And I did it this morning, and it was a trip. Like, I was sitting outside on the chair outside by the patio, and by the time I opened my eyes, the grass was just super bright green. The trees were green. The birds sounded louder. Like, I was tuned in. So I know that I made a significant shift.
That's great. And there's something called box breathing as well, which is pretty similar, where you're doing that 4-second breath in through the nose, 4 in, and then it's a 7-second hold, and then an 8-second out. Now, the hold is important because you actually by holding, you actually build up CO2. And CO2 is actually a vasodilator to the brain. So it actually increases blood flow to the frontal cortex. So that's why, like, people that hyperventilate, they actually get too alkaline. And that's why they take the bag and they put the bag over their mouth and they breathe into the bag, because the whole goal is to increase CO2, right? So if you kind of take that concept, people getting stress, over breathing, over exhaling, then they get this kind of panic attack going, and they use the bag. So you say, okay, now what can we do from a breathing strategy when we're stressed to help that? Well, the good deep breath in through the nose that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS, and then that hold for a bit of time, followed by a slow breathe out so we don't go too alkaline with getting that CO2 out. Now, I find, though, just focusing on the breathing timing is actually a little bit stressful. So I kind of do it, get like a rhythm of what it feels like. And then once you understand the feeling of what it feels like, go more off the feeling versus counting. Because I find if you're trying to relax, it's actually stressful trying to count this stuff out. So I kind of just breathe in as deeply and as comfortably as I can through my nose. I try to just have a nice comfortable hold and a nice slow breath out. But count for a bit so you know what it feels like, and then go back, reach for the feeling versus the counting number.
Yeah, I'm glad that you called that out. That's something I did, but I wasn't aware that I should have made the distinction there. Yeah, definitely for me, once I get in the flow, numbers don't even exist. It's just a matter of feeling your body, and you'll know when you need to exhale. You'll know when you need to take the next breath.
Exactly. And then also, I think it's important that we get a baseline. A lot of women, especially, they're fixated on the scale. I think it's good to have an idea of where your weight's at from a starting point. But remember, weight on a scale cannot look at the quality of the weight. It does not break up fat from water, from muscle. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, if you're going to use a scale, a better scale to use is a Tanita scale. That will actually look at fat percentage. It will even look at water percentage. So that's helpful because if you see, someone eating a whole bunch of gluten one day, that will drive inflammation and their water percentage will go up. Women before menstruation, their water percentage will go up. Even potentially around ovulation, things can happen too. So because of the hormones fluctuating, that can cause fluctuations of water going up, which can increase weight 3 or 4 pounds, like that. And then number 2, stress will cause water retention. Eating inflammatory foods will cause water retention. And we don't know if we're putting on muscle, because if we started some of these exercise strategies and we're getting less inflamed, our body is in a less stressed out state. The less stressed out we are, the more our body favors putting on muscle, because muscle is very metabolically active. Our body only wants to put muscle on when it's safe, meaning when there's an abundance around us, because why put calories and nutrients into tissue that's very metabolically expensive? And muscle is very metabolically expensive. So think about it. When you go into debt, the first thing you cut out are going to be vacations and maybe going out to dinner and extra fun little excursions. Well, think of your muscle as the fun excursions or the nice restaurant or the vacation. It's the first thing that gets crossed off the list when you go into debt, or when you go into adrenal debt or stress debt, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Comments on that?
No, that was great.
Yeah, more analogy. So get the analogy, get the analogy down, and forget the rote facts of what's happening in your body. Get the analogy, and you don't have to worry about memorizing this stuff. That's me and your job, Evan.
Yeah, I'm getting better at it.
Yeah, you're doing good. So the scale, body fat percentage, also waist and hip circumference. Take the widest part of your waist and the widest part of your hips. A good place to do it around your waist is the belly button, because it's stationary. It's always there. And just make sure the tape that you use is flat and parallel with the ground. I like a tape called myotape because it has a set bit of tension to it, and that tension allows it to be consistent each time. So parallel myotape around the belly button, and then choose the widest part of the hips. Use the myotape as well. Pull the slack out and let it come to a homeostasis of where it's naturally at resting tension. Write down that where it's at. Do it first thing in the morning before water and after your first morning pee, and then you're set. So then you have a good baseline.
Now, did you say something about dividing those numbers, like a ratio there?
You could do that, but that's fine. I'm fine with that. I mean, we know if the numbers go down, here's the problem. If your numbers go down equally, well, the ratio stays the same, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's still good to look at it, but where the ratio really is helpful is if women typically have that. I think that the Marilyn Monroe ratio is like 0.78 to 0.8. So meaning your waist is 20% less than your hips. I think that's kind of the overall metric. For men, it's closer to a 1-to-1. But when your tummy is so big that it's closer to your hips, that's where you get closer to a 1-to-1, right? Like let's say a 35-inch, let's do like a 38-inch hips for women with a 38-inch waist. Well, that's like a 1-to-1, right? That's not good. So you want to drop the waist in a bit, ideally, around 30 or so, or even maybe below, to get that ratio at, I'd say, an upper 0.7 to lower 0.8. Now that's like optimal, right? Like they've gone back and they've actually measured a lot of the Greek Roman sculptures of women that were, thousands of years old. They even looked at Marilyn Monroe, right? And she was, I think, today's equivalent of like a size 8 or a size 10 or 12. Like not like your typical 0 or 2, right? But like an 8 or 10 or 12 in that area. And they found that this ratio of like 0.78 to 0.8 is like the ideal ratio. And they measured all these different sculptures in ancient Rome. And they found this ratio is kind of consistent. So keep that in mind. It's nice to look at it. Now I like ratios because guess what? As if you get bigger, if your hips get a little bigger, but your waist stays in that ratio, that's actually a good kind of thing. So it's not 100% based off of how small you are, but how proportionate you are.
Exactly.
So I like that. So it kind of adds a level of individualization to it.
Yeah, and you're not just looking at a poster or a magazine to think you need to look like that. And most of the time, they're sickly skinny.
Right. Exactly. I think for men too, there's like a ratio of like hips to shoulder ratio of like 0.9 or something. Is another famous ratio with men, but that kind of gives you the idea of the ratio. So get your ratios down with measurements. Get a good Tanita scale. If you're going to use it, look more at the body water content as well as body fat content, and just try to do exercises that are going to focus on putting on muscle once you get out of that restorative phase, right? Restorative first, muscle building second, and then just ask those 3 questions first.
Say the questions again.
Number 1, do you feel energized with the exercise? 2, can you emotionally repeat it after a workout? And then number 3, how do you feel later on that day or that next day?
Yep.
That's
I just got an email this morning from a female patient who ran a 10, was it a 10K or a 10 miler? Might have been like a 15K, closer to 10 mile. Anyway, retested her adrenals, significantly backtracked, surprise, surprise, from this race and all of the training that she was doing. She was running like 6 or 7 miles a day or something for weeks. I mean, just awful. And I, basically told her, look, this is going to destroy you, but if you want to do it, then that's fine. I'll support you and I'll let you live out your dream of, completing this race. And then she emailed me this morning and she says that she threw in the bib. She was going to run another 10 miler or a 10K or something in a couple of weeks. And she's been convinced and she threw in the bib and she's not doing it anymore. So not to say don't chase your dreams, but I mean, that's something that is just really unnecessary and is really not going to help your weight loss. I can't count the number of massively overweight men and women that I've seen, and they're running these long endurance races thinking that it's going to help you. It is not going to help you. It's going to destroy you.
I agree. And you got to fine tune, goals and achievement versus what's sustainable in the long term.
Yeah.
So you got to have to, you got to balance that out and figure out what's most important for you. But getting back onto the calorie standpoint, I know a lot of women that may have done the standard American diet or like a Weight Watchers or a low calorie diet, may have done a lot of the conventional exercise like running marathon type of training, 5, 8, 10 miles a day. And they're like, yeah, I lost a lot of weight. And that can happen initially. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that type of exercise doesn't help you lose weight in the short run. I mean, in the first few months, you will definitely lose a lot of weight. The question is it sustainable? Number 2, is it healthy for your hormones? And then number 3, is it going to be something that creates realistic expectations? Meaning women do it for 3 or 4 months and then they lose this amount of weight. And then what happens is, let's say they're at 160, now they're down to 140 or 130. Now that 130 becomes like the dragon they're always chasing. That's like the baseline in their head of where they should be at.
Right.
And that's tough because that may not be where your body wants to be when everything else is dialed. And that may be kind of like, a bodybuilder or a fitness trainer. They dip down to that weight they want to be at for competition and then they come out of it. And I think people need to realize that you could probably dip down 20 pounds below where you're at, but it wouldn't be something you'd want to be at all year around. So we want to make sure you have a sustainable weight that you can be at. And it's tough because we have ectomorphs in society that can stay very lean all the time. Especially we see it in like the runway model type figure that Hollywood has chosen to be like, what's hot and sexy. But again, it's a very small amount of people that are this ectomorph body type that they can be less selective of what they eat, less selective on exercise, and they keep this, very tall, lean frame year round. Now, I see a lot of these people, once they hit menopause, especially as females, things go downhill fast. And I have that perspective of seeing women literally gain 100 pounds over a few years without really doing much different. So
Wow.
This can look nice, when you're below age 50 and you can have a lot of latitude and flexibility, but as you go up in age, that can change. And I see a lot of women too that are at this runway model physique and they have so much gas and bloating and digestive issues that you would think, oh, wow, they must be healthy because they look, stereotypically healthy, but they have a lot of internal health issues and they may even have brain fog and fatigue. So their health challenges may be manifesting more internally, especially as they're younger, and then will sometimes express more externally, especially once they hit menopause where their hormones significantly shift.
That's a killer point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Just because you look beautiful or you look ripped as a guy or something, generally those people are not that healthy. I've seen plenty of ripped guys, eating Lucky Charms and, Reese Puffs. They look ripped and guys are idolizing them. Wow. But I guarantee their brain probably doesn't work good. I guarantee their sex drive's probably not healthy. they probably have some mood issues, depression, anxiety, etc. I'd rather look a little bit more like a normal person, still have some muscle, but my brain and my gut work good. Because I've been there, done that with IBS for years, and it sucks. And I looked better or more ripped and had more muscle when I had the worst of my health issues compared to now. Maybe a little less ripped just because I've been so busy. I'm not working out as much, but my gut's better and my brain's working better. So I'm happy to take that sacrifice.
Totally. And I think everyone, especially the females, because of the pressure of society on them, go watch my video on body typing, because you want to know what kind of body type you are first, because that kind of really sets the expectations. We have the ectomorphs, which are the leaner, it's so hard to gain weight. These are the runway models. These are the super lean, skinny guys. It's just harder for them to put on weight.
Yep.
Number two, we have the mesomorph, which are kind of like the in-between. They're kind of like the hybrid. They can kind of go either way, so to speak. And then we have the endomorph. These are the people that are definitely more rounder, rotund, the people that we would just, typically say, I'm big boned, right? The South Park expression. They're just easier to keep fat on. And when you know what kind of body type you are, you just know that you have a more upward or uphill battle. If you're a endomorph and you're trying to get leaner, you're just going to have more of an uphill battle, and you may have a lot less latitude to cheat. So then when you hang around your ectomorph friends and they're able to do different things and have not the same result as you, not the same ramifications, you got to just be realistic at the cards you're dealt with.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean you can't be healthy, though. Doesn't mean you still can't perform well. Doesn't mean you can't be at your optimal leanness and have good muscle mass. Doesn't mean that. We just have to know the cards you're dealt with, play them to your best. So if you're like let's say an endomorph and you oscillate between 160 and 200, let's say you're like a 5'5" frame, well, there's a lot of things we can do to be at that lower side, but we just got to make sure, if you're at 160 and then you're comparing yourself to your ectomorph friend who oscillates between 100 and 130, and you're comparing their 100 to your 160, right? Or let's say their 130, their bad side of the fence, to your good side of the fence, you're always going to feel like a failure. So you have to get the mindset, where's your body type at? And then you got to get your diet dialed in. So the paleo template will always be the template. And then within that template, we adjust the macronutrients, and then we adjust the exercise according to where you're at. And then the next level on top of that is where you see a functional medicine doctor or practitioner to get the hormones and the thyroid and the gut and the detox and the nutrients looked at if we're still having health challenges beyond that.
Absolutely. Great way to summarize there.
Any last comment you want to make? I have one more I want to make before.
Yeah, last one, drink more water. Dehydration can be an issue, and it's surprising how many people are not drinking enough water because they're drinking, say, bulletproof coffee or herbal teas all the time. So hydration is another important factor that you can kind of tweak a little bit and see if anything changes for you.
Absolutely. And I also say a death rattle for a lot of women is too much fasting. If you're doing a lot of intermittent fasting or fasting, that can create a stress response because of the hormonal fluctuation and fertility. That can create some problems with women. So we got to be very careful. Men can have it too, but because of the delicate orchestra of female hormones, we got to be careful with that. The next thing I would say is counting your calories isn't important per se. I try to make sure people are getting enough calories, but for the most part, if we're eating the nutrient-dense, low-toxin, anti-inflammatory paleo type of template, if we're using our appetite as a gauge, we're always going to get enough calories for the most part. There are exceptions to every rule. Where I get concerned is if people really ramp up the fats too much and they're having an issue with gaining a little bit of weight, I like to look at the calories, see where the calories are at total-wise, look and see where your macros are at. So let's say you're at like a 20% carb, 15% protein, 50 or 60% fat, and your calories are at 2,100 calories a day, and you're a female, and we found out that based on your height and weight and activity, you could probably be at 1,900 to 2,000. We may drop the calories 100 at a time, and just make sure you're not feeling hungry throughout the day. Make sure you're not missing meals, and sometimes just dropping the calories just a bit like that, as long as we're not getting hungry, can make a big difference. So drop the calories a touch, be in touch with yourself, look at the extra fats like the nut butters. It's really easy to overdo those, maybe putting too much fat in your coffee. Take a look at those, but do it with a doctor's or nutritionist's support, because you want to make sure you're not starving yourself. You want to make sure you've calculated how many calories you need based on your activity level, and then you want to do an assessment of what your macronutrient percentages are, whether it's a 20, 15, 60, and then you want to know where your total calories are at, and then just try to tweak it down just a little bit per week and see if that makes a difference, as well as, the exercise should already be dialed in too.
Yep.
Any comments on that?
No, I think that's good.
Well, Evan, anything else you want to say here?
Not today. I mean, that was a lot. That was a lot of information to take in. I think we gave double the amount of info that I thought we may have given. So you may have to go back and listen to this one again.
And we got the transcriptions up here. So go to Evan's site, notjustpaleo.com. Go to beyondwellnessradio.com. We got the transcriptions. Leave us a review on iTunes. Again, there may be one thing in here that resonates with you, so try to just pick one thing that works for you. Again, men have these issues too, and all the strategies that we talked about and we kind of dialed in and we spoke to maybe more of the female crowd, all men listening, these things still apply for you as well. So still, we're not ignoring you. We're just really reaching out to the women, because I feel like they have a little bit of a harder time in this area, but all of these things still apply to all the males listening too.
Yep.
All right, Evan, great show. Anyone that really liked it, go on iTunes, go to the click below your video or your MP3 you're listening to on iTunes, and just click the review button. That'll bring you right to the iTunes page, and you can leave us a great review, and just, sharing is caring. We appreciate it.
Definitely. Take care.
Evan, sounds good. Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.